It's Monday, which means another Mock Draft Monday. Welcome back to the channel. I will be getting into 2-round mock drafts here in the near future, at least, one or two, maybe even up to the third round sometimes. But because things got so weird yesterday, and really this whole entire week, it feels like we had football every day of the week with Christmas. Did we have games on Friday? Definitely Saturday and Sunday, obviously. There's football like every single day of the week, and of course there's football tonight. We got Lions and 49ers, which I guess is a good time to give you my picks for Monday Night Football. Going with a 3-man, I think it's the best way to go. Only putting $5 on it, don't feel amazing, but this video is sponsored by Underdog. Ricky Pearsall, higher 23.5 receiving yards. Sam Laporta, lower 44.5 receiving yards. The 49ers actually just limit tight end receiving yards in general, and then the Lions really are good at limiting rushing yards by opposing running backs, have Isaac Guerrero lower 64.5 yards. I really do think Underdog is the best place to play daily fantasy sports. Use code BENGAL down in the description. New customers will get a free pick tonight. Brock Purdy higher, 0.5 total yards. It really is free. If he plays, he's going to get higher than half a yard, right? So you're eligible to play if you live in any of these non-grayed out states. Green states are Pick'em champions, which is essentially the same thing to Pick'em Classic. States like California, Texas, Florida are eligible to play Pick'em using this availability map. You can totally see that. And of course, blocking off in the top right, we have New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. You're eligible to play Pick'em in some capacity. Use code BENGAL. Link is down in the description. But we will get into the weirdness here at number 1 overall. It's back to Travis Hunter being the first pick in the draft. I don't think that this quarterback class is good enough to where teams are really going to be trading up hauls to move up for them, right? I think if you put the over-under at 2.5 QBs taken in the first round, I think the under will hit. I feel pretty good about it. It's not a particularly great class. Will we see maybe one go in the back end of the first round? Typically we have seen that in the past, but not necessarily super recently. I think things are kind of shifting a little bit to where if teams aren't taking one at the very top of the draft, they're just really not taking a chance on one in the middle. I mean, we saw the Steelers do it with Kenny Pickett here, but that doesn't really seem to work out. It's either maybe take one at the top of the draft or wait until, round 3, 4, 5, something in that range where you're really actually kind of drafting a backup. Some people have been commenting, it's like, no way only 2 QBs go in the first round. It's like, you don't know the quarterback class then because it's just not especially good. Can we see 3? I mean, teams always need quarterback. I guess it's a possibility, but this is not a good quarterback year. It really isn't. So I think Travis Hunter just could be the first overall pick. He really is a generational talent. He is a superstar receiver, even better at corner. I mean, he just really can do it all. He's a tremendous player. And for the Patriots, just get the best player in the draft. It's Travis Hunter, and it seems like a no-brainer pick at number 1. I saw Nick Wright from TV. I don't know what show he's on, but I know he was on First Take briefly. Said, here's a totally non-insane scenario where the Patriots trade the first pick but still stay in the top 5 and get Drake May and Travis Hunter, fire Gerard Mayo, and get Dion. I can't remember the exact specifics. That was the gist. It was absolute insanity. I can't see that happening. I can see them getting Travis Hunter, though, and I think he will be the first overall pick in this scenario. Down quarterback year, we might see a non-QB go at number 1 overall. It's weird to see a non-QB, non-D-line, non-tackle go at 1, but I think Travis Hunter is that special of a player. But at number 2, I think that leaves the Titans in prime quarterback position. And even though it's not a great class, I do think we will see 2 go inside the top 10, inside the top 5, maybe inside the top 3. But that might be it for the first round. At this point, it's kind of a toss-up between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Do you want the guy that's way better now in Shedeur Sanders or the guy with way more upside potentially in Cam Ward? That's really what you're playing at. I know Ward has incredible numbers. He's just not particularly accurate. If you look at some of these, weighted on target percentage for throws, he's just not especially good. It was at like 61% compared to a guy like Jaden Daniels last year, who was at like 76%. Jaden Daniels was an awesome prospect. These guys, you can latch onto something. Like Sanders is accurate. Ward has good arm talent, good improvisational ability. But you're latching onto that. It's not like, oh my, these guys are superstar QB prospects. They're really not. They can develop, they can be solid, or maybe even above average NFL starters if they reach their peak. But it's far from a given any year, but even more so this year. But that being said, who do you want here? We'll go with Shedeur Sanders. I just do think he's going to be the first QB off the board. Again, Ward maybe has more potential. Sanders is the better quarterback prospect in my opinion. He's just way more accurate, and I think that really does matter at the quarterback position. The Titans end up getting their guy, which means at number 3 overall, the Browns will get their guy. That's going to be Cam Ward from Miami in this scenario, pairing up with a former Miami player, never teammates of course, but David Njoku, another first-round pick out of Miami. And we really have not seen many the past several years. It's kind of why I mentioned that. Have there been any in between Njoku and now Cam Ward? Surely, right? I think Philip Dorsett was before Njoku. I think he was 2015. Njoku, I think, was 2017. Am I missing? Greg Rousseau, of course, and Jalen Phillips. Those might be the only two. I'm trying to think of anybody on offense. I'm struggling to think of anybody, but those two for sure. Anyway, irrelevant at the moment. Maybe a DB in there as well. Hard to say. At number 4, though, have the New York Giants on the clock. It's a weird spot for the Giants because obviously they need a quarterback, but there's not a quarterback to take. So it's, do you want to go offense? Do you want to go defense here? I think overall it should be best player available in mind, but edge is not really one of those positions I see the Giants investing a really high pick in. Although, I do think Abdul Carter could be a really, really fun player with the Giants. Of course, they pass on Micah Parsons under Dave Gettleman. And Abdul Carter doesn't necessarily need to be an all-the-time edge. He could be somebody that can play off the ball. We've seen it at Penn State. But he's really becoming an incredible edge rusher. Could be a fun fit for the Giants, but I don't think they do it in that scenario. I think Will Johnson would end up being the selection here, just because the Giants really are struggling at corner. Their defense is not especially good, and Deonte Banks is not really everything you wanted him to be at this point in his career. You've got a really good slot corner in Drew Phillips. I think safety's potentially on the board as well, but Will Johnson, I guess, is your guy here at number 4 overall. He's one of the best players in the entire draft. One of the best corners, of course, but he and Travis Hunter at corner, I think, are really, really close. Whereas Travis Hunter, of course, can play receiver. But in terms of being the better corner, Will Johnson's right there, maybe even better than Travis Hunter, is the number 4 overall pick for a reason. The Giants upgrade their secondary, which is in desperate need of a true boundary corner that's not just Deonte Banks. Will Johnson could be your CB1, Deonte Banks over to CB2. It's a better spot for him, probably. Jags at 5, though. This is interesting because there are a number of different ways you can go. You want to boost the trenches, maybe Mason Graham, or the other side of the ball. And I think we're going to go offensive line here. I'm going to go Kelvin Banks. Hook 'em horns, of course. Hook 'em horns. I do think he's got the best chance to stick at tackle between the two of those guys, Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks. I think that he could move inside to guard as well. He profiles well at guard, but I think he's got the best chance of those two to stick at tackle. And for the Jags, you could use a boost overall in the offensive line. So, I mean, Will Campbell certainly would make sense here. But I think if you decide to go with an offensive lineman and Trent Baalke is still your general manager, I don't think Will Campbell will meet the thresholds that Baalke's looking for. You know, part of the reason Trayvon Walker was the first overall pick was the arm length, right? The incredible length in the trenches, and obviously the top-tier athleticism. He's become a very good player, by the way. Most people don't really want to recognize that, but he's been a pretty good player for Jacksonville. Goes under the radar because they're not a very good team. But Banks, I think, has a better fit for Jacksonville if Trent Baalke's still the GM. Better chance to stick a tackle, as I say, so I think he will be the 5th overall pick in this scenario. But it wouldn't shock me to see Mason Graham. It wouldn't shock me to see Will Campbell. Wouldn't shock me to, see them potentially move out of this pick if we were doing trades. Panthers at number 6. I'm going to go back to Abdul Carter. I think he's just the best player available here, clearly to a team that desperately needs to improve their defense and especially their pass rush. Abdul Carter, I think, is an easy selection there at 7. Or 6, but things get a little bit more interesting here at 7 because the Jets could go offense. They need a QB potentially. Aaron Rodgers is not it. They could definitely use a receiver. Who knows if Devontae Adams will be back. right? Their defense could definitely use a boost. And I think it's very easy to just pencil in Mason Graham right now. Teteroa McMillan, obviously, is in that conversation. But for the Jets, we really need to see what happens in this offseason before we can feel good about who they're potentially drafting, because it's a little bit weird with Rodgers, with Davante Adams, with their future. There are a lot of question marks. Raiders at 8, I think Teteroa McMillan makes a ton of sense here. I considered Ashton Genty. I considered something in the trenches had Mason Graham dropped. But, Jalen Walker could be fun too. Is a real fun kind of sometimes stand-up, sometimes pass rush type guy. I think Walker can play off the ball and on the ball. He's really fun on the ball, explosive off the edge, but he's shown the ability to play off the ball as well. He's really good in run defense in that regard. He can stack and shed, make tackles, sideline to sideline type range. Really, really fun player, but finding his fit can be a little bit interesting because he's just a little undersized to be a true full-time edge rusher, but in the right spot, a 3-4 defense, I think he's going to be a pretty good fit somewhere. But Raiders at number 8, I am going to go Teteroa McMillan, as I said, or as at least mentioned. No more Davante Adams. You're obviously looking to get a QB in this class, but you're just not in position. And which of these teams is going to trade out to let you get a QB? Are the Patriots going to move back to 8, potentially out of range of a blue-chip player, in order for you to get your QB? It might not be worth it. More picks is not always better, right? So it can seem that way, but also you want to be able to hit on the player that you draft, and you want to trade out of the range of some of these top players in the draft in order to get maybe a first-round pick, maybe a top 10 pick next year, maybe it's top 20. Who's to say how good the Raiders are going to be? But all that stuff gets factored in. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense, right? I know it's easy to say, we'd very easily move down just to 8 to get a first-round pick next year, if that's even what's being offered, which I think from 8 to 1 it would be, even in a down QB year. But regardless of that, Teteroa McMillan is the pick here at number 8. No trade, so it's pointless to speculate at this point. McMillan is a wide receiver 1 type potential guy. Goes off the board in the top 10. You lose Davante Adams. I don't think Jacoby Myers can really, pull that offense on his back as your wide receiver 1 type. He's just not a wide receiver 1. And, you have Trey Tucker. They brought in Terrace Marshall, I found out. It's just not a particularly inspiring group. Teteroa McMillan at least helps move that in the right direction. Bears fans, you're probably not sick of this, but I do it every time. Will Campbell, the Bears at 9. I think if he's on the board, he makes a ton of sense at guard, potentially even tackle. The Bears need to upgrade that offensive line. Will Campbell is just, if he's available, he's the pick. Kelvin Banks, if he was available, he would be the pick there. If both of those guys are somehow off the board at number 9, things would get a little bit more interesting. Where do the Bears go in that sense? Maybe D-line, but O-line is still such a need. I don't know. Saints at number 10. We've been D-line here a lot. I'm going to go back to receiver. Going Luther Burden from Mizzou. He is a slot receiver, but I don't think he's necessarily slot exclusive. I think he could also be a Z type, but also that's essentially how I view Chris Olave. But Olave has been such a good player for the Saints when he's on the field, when he's healthy. Burden, I think, would be a really nice complementary piece. He's so explosive, so good after the catch, so good with the ball in his hands overall. This is just a guy you want to get the football to him and let him work. I think you start to build a really nice combination of speed in that offense with, if you're going to hold on to him long-term, Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, Luther Burden. That's a pretty nice trio. And then you have, of course, some guys that come and rotate in. And it's interesting to see, the Saints, how they're getting on without all these weapons. If you can call, Rashid Shaheed a weapon. I think he is as a deep threat personally, but he's not, one of these top-tier guys. It's just, for me, I think the Saints, we've seen how good they can be offensively when they have weapons. I think Derek Carr with weapons can be an effective QB, even if I don't really value him as one of the top QBs in the league. But we really just have seen a ton of injuries and bad overall play from a Saints team this year. I think Burden is somebody that can help the offense. Long story short, that was really rambly, but I don't know. I really like talking football here, and I love the hypotheticals, obviously. That's why we have a mock draft here every Monday. But 49ers at number 11, going Mykel Williams in this spot. I think he could absolutely be a top 10 pick. It's just this combination of size and athleticism is rare. It's why Trayvon Walker was the first overall pick a few years ago. Obviously, it fit with Trent Baalke at GM, having those thresholds, looking for that big developable player piece, right? And I know the 49ers don't have Trent Baalke anymore, but Williams does have big-time upside. We know the Niners have to be better in the trenches, really on both sides of the football. Williams is a really good fit, and you have a healthy Nick Bosa on one side, Mykel Williams on the other. That's a good duo. Colts at 12, going Malachi Starks. And I think he's one of the best 5 or 10 players in the draft. He's available at 12. Within the next year, you will not have Nick Cross or Julian Blackmon under contract. I think Cross expires this year, and Blackmon expires after next year. So safety is very much in play. Starks can maybe find the field as a starter right away if Nick Cross is not back. And even if he is back, I think Starks is certainly a better prospect. We'll see if he ends up being a better player. But could maybe play in the nickel as well. I know you have a really good nickel corner, but find a space for this guy in the field. He's instinctive. He's a playmaker. The Colts need to upgrade their secondary. The top couple of corners are off the board. You take Malachi Starks. I feel like it's a pretty good fit. Cowboys at 13, no-brainer. Ashton Jeanty. You need to upgrade your running attack. It's a lot tougher to find somebody better than Ashton Jeanty to do that. I think at 13, it makes perfect sense. And we know, of course, I've ranted about it before, rambled about it before. The Cowboys love their Boise State players. And they're going to get a really, really good one. Maybe the best Boise State player they've ever drafted here at number 13. Although it'd be tough to beat DeMarcus Lawrence. Right? He was like a second or third round pick who's had quite a career. I know Leighton Vander Esch was not always exactly what the Cowboys expected him to be, even though he had some run as a really good player, for sure. Cardinals at 14. This is a weird spot for me. I want to go on the interior, right? But I also think the edge could be improved a lot. And Jalen Walker, I feel like, is a really good fit in Arizona. And he can play off the ball if you need him to. But this guy is explosive as a pass rusher. I kind of see what you got out of Zaven Collins. I think Walker could have a similar type development. Again, we talked about 3-4 versus 4-3. Walker may be a better fit in a 3-4. But I think for a team, like the Cardinals, you look at how B.J. Ojulari potentially profiles with that team, right? Injury obviously has halted his growth as a player. It sucks to see that, but, missed, I think, all of this year, right? Jalen Walker can be someone that comes in right away and is versatile and impactful. And he's getting too good to be available, and you just go BPA here if you're the Cardinals. Nick Scorton, I could see. I could also obviously see James Pierce for the same reasons I talked up Jalen Walker. Shamar Stewart, if you want more of, the bigger presence along with Scorton in the trenches. He's 290, right? But I think Walker is just best player available in this spot. Really improves your pass rush. I could see a number of different arguments for a lot of these edge rushers. Bottom line is, I think it should probably be some type of defensive lineman, including edge rushers in that, of course. Some type of D lineman here if you're Arizona, because that's the strength of this class. There are a lot of really good ones available. It just depends what type you want, because a Scorton and Shamar Stewart are pretty different from Jalen Walker and James Pierce. It really just depends what type you want. Walker, I think, is a decent enough fit here and is the best player of the bunch. Pierce, I think, is the next closest, but Scorton and Stewart are really good too and are way bigger. It just depends what type you want. Again, I'm going to say that 5 or 6 times over. Like, I know the whole reason I just rambled about that. I know the Cardinals are a 4-3 defense, right? And I just said Jalen Walker is a better fit in 3-4. While that's probably true, Baron Browning, he's a free agent. This is your Baron Browning replacement right away. Long story short, or really long story long, or short story long. I don't know what's happening. Dolphins at 15. Going Derek Harmon. I continue to pound the table for Derek Harmon. I think he's one of the better players in the entire draft. He, outside of Mason Graham, is probably the next best interior defensive lineman in what is a good class. I would not shock me to see Walter Nolan or Kenneth Grant or Tyleik Williams at this pick if the Dolphins decide to go interior defensive line. But I think you're trying to replace Christian Wilkins still, and this is your penetrating 3-tech type player. He's so disruptive on the interior, and he's been so instrumental and impactful for that Oregon defense. Part of the reason why they've been so good this year. Bengals at 16. I feel like this is a really good fit. Shamar Stewart. It's the body type also that the Bengals really seem to like. Stewart, again, I think can be versatile enough to move to the inside sometimes. He's huge, but he's really, really athletic. He's just a freak player, and if you can develop him, you're going to have a monster type player. He's like your juiced up Keon White, even though White's been kind of like misutilized so far this season for New England, but he really is flashed. I think Stewart can end up being a Keon White type player, and they're both incredible athletes with big time size and versatility. Just feels like an awesome fit there in Cincinnati. They really need to upgrade their defense, obviously, as do the Falcons. Falcons at 17. I've done this quite a few times, but I'm going James Pierce Jr. He's just such a good pass rusher. And I look at the Falcons, it's tough to find something that they need more than an upgraded pass rush. I know Ebikadi's come on a little bit. You still have Matt Judon, who you traded for, but James Pierce Jr. under contract now for a minimum of 4, maybe 5 years with the 5th-year option. It's just a really, really good player to add to the mix. You need to improve your pass rush. Pierce helps you do that. At 18, going with Josh Simmons from Ohio State to Seattle. Coming back from injury, but man, he was really, really good prior to going down with injury in 2024. He has potential to be one of the best tackles in this class. I think he could have been the first tackle off the board if he stayed healthy. I think he was genuinely that good this year. And of course has, pretty good tackle size at 6'5", 310. I think longer arms, especially compared to Will Campbell, that could have made him the first tackle off the board. Injury pushes him down a bit, but is a good pickup here to Seattle at number 18. And at number 19, it's another team looking for offensive line help, and I will be giving it to him. Jonah Savaiinaea. Somebody's like, you're mispronouncing that. It's on the Arizona website. It is on the Arizona website. Where do you think I learned how to say it? It's pronounced Savaiinaea. Jonah Savaiinaea. It's exactly how he says it. I promise you. I try to do my research as much as I can when it's available. Not every school has a media guide with a pronunciation guide or a Dropbox with the player actually saying how to pronounce their name. Arizona, thankfully, is one of those schools that does. Florida is another one, but, a school like Mizzou couldn't find it for Armand Membu, so I just hope I'm saying it right in that case, right? But anyway, the Texans desperately need to upgrade their offensive line. Savaiinaea has experience at tackle and guard. I think he's good enough to stick at tackle, but was great at guard. So you've just got a versatile guy here who can do it all. Yeah, I don't know if I'd move him to center, but you don't have to. So that's a good thing if you're the Texans. Guard or tackle, depending on exactly what you need. In this scenario, you're probably keeping Laramie Tunsil and moving Savaiinaea inside. And, Titus Howard at right tackle, that's probably what happens. Now, I know Howard has played and is playing guard, but what does this mean for Blake Fisher? I mean, Howard just really isn't all that good, so he just might be gone, right? Like, that's also a possibility. Maybe you keep him on as a 6th or a 7th offensive lineman. There's potential here, but anyway, however you want to do it, whether Howard stays or not, or is gone, or is moving back to tackle, or stays at guard, or Shaq Mason's gone, you need to upgrade your interior O-line and potentially tackle. Savaiinaea, I think, is just a good fit overall, but probably playing guard in this scenario. Broncos at 20. We're back to Colston Loveland here. Very athletic, very good receiving tight end. I just think it's a good fit there in Denver. Bucks at 21. When Nick Scorton got to improve this pass rush. Scorton, again, maybe a better fit for a 4-3, and that's not exactly what this Tampa Bay defense is, but he's also a big-time pass rusher, has been really productive in the past, could be a strong side defensive end, and you feel pretty good about it. He's a big dude, 6'4", 285. He's like a classic Steve Spagnuolo type pass rusher, but is a good fit here in Tampa. He's athletic enough and is obviously quite a good pass rusher. Yaya Diaby's been a good player this year, but Tryon Shoyinka is likely gone. At number 22, Obvious pickup of Tyler Warren here, maybe the best overall tight end in the draft. He can block. He's 6'6", 260. I think he's going to be a really good fit with Jim Harbaugh. And, of course, Loveland off the board. The top receivers off the board, really. Warren just ends up making a lot of sense. I didn't mention Ladd McConkey last week when talking about the Chargers receiving core. I guess I thought it was kind of like too obvious. He's been such a great player this year. But he's not a wide receiver one, right? He's producing a ton, but he's not a wide receiver one, right? Doesn't have the body type. He's a classic Z, can play the slot, obviously, as well. Obviously has good speed, but he's not a wide receiver one. He can be really productive, like Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's not a wide receiver one, but can be really productive. Amon-Ra St. Brown, not a wide receiver one type, but can be really productive in that offense. It depends how they want to do it. Wide receiver one typically means X-style receiver, bigger body, plays on the outside, can win on the outside. Some of these slot guys can't do that, even though they're really productive. It's not a shot at them. It's just you got to realize their strengths and potentially their weaknesses. There's a reason that St. Brown plays so much in the slot, and it doesn't mean he's bad. It's just his style of play is not conducive to success on the outside. McConkey can win more on the outside, but isn't a classic wide receiver one. I don't think he can carry an offense. So I think, if you were in position for, obviously a Teteroa McMillan, you might pull the trigger still on a receiver, but again, that's a lot of, will he even get close to this pick? It's a lot of just, hearsay and speculation. Anyway, Warren's a great selection at 22. McConkey's a great player. I think people are going to misinterpret what I'm saying, which is nothing new. Warren there at 22, great pickup. I could have stopped it at that. Probably should have stopped it at that. Next up, we have the LA Rams. And I've got the Rams going with Savone Revel here. They need to upgrade their secondary. Revel, I think, is a top 20 type player who got injured and maybe falls a little bit. But at 6'3", with his speed, you just don't find those guys every day. He's a really, really good player. Of course, you wanted to see a little bit more from him, but got injured so early in the year. Not really a big tackler, but his coverage skills, his size make up for a lot of that. And I think would be a fun fit here with the Rams, who obviously really need to upgrade corner. Been tackle for me here a lot, but Simmons off the board, Savaiinai off the board. Do you go Ariante Ursary, Wyatt Milam, maybe, right? Cam Williams, but Revel ends up being the pick. You got to upgrade CB in a big way, as do the Packers, to be honest. And I've actually got a new introduction to the first round here. I'm going Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. Another guy who's dealt with some injuries, but is a really, really good cover player, especially at a great 2023. He's got good size again, 6'1", 186. These guys at corner nowadays are just bigger and bigger and faster. And they're such great athletes. You're no longer seeing a lot of 5'11" corners go early. It's 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" sometimes, right? And it's just the new breed of corner. These guys are big enough, but also athletic enough in a big way. Harrison's a really great cover player, and that's going to be a really good fit in Green Bay. Now, Benjamin Morrison's a really great player too. Also another guy that's dealt with some injuries. It's tough to find a really clean corner prospect this year because all of them have been hurt, with the exception of Travis Hunter. Will Johnson, his season was ended prematurely, right? Revel, same deal. Harrison's been banged up. Benjamin Morrison, season over. Is Jahdae Barron a true boundary corner? I love him as a player, but he might have his limitations. How fast is he going to run? Is he... I love the player, right? Jahdae Barron's my favorite Texas player over his entire time there, but is a team going to value him like Brian Branch, and maybe he falls into the middle of the second round? Or is the team going to say, hey, this is just a great DB, we'll find a spot for him, let's draft him in the first round? It'll be interesting to see. But Harrison there is the pick for me. Steelers could also use an upgraded corner, but Emeka Ibuka has fallen right into their laps. I know they typically don't draft receiver in the first round, but change it up, right? You need to. When Emeka Ibuka is available, can play in the slot, can be a reliable Z even, this is your wide receiver 2 type. It's not disrespectful. It's just what style of player he is. Would be a really good complementary piece to George Pickens. As we get to another team who could desperately use a cornerback upgrade, it's the Commanders, and that's where Benjamin Morrison goes off the board. Could have switched him and Maxwell Harrison, of course, even, Savone Revel. Morrison's a great player, but again, how serious is that injury? We'll have to see. I've heard it could be a little bit weird, and that's why he's kind of fallen out of the first round in a lot of these mocks that people are doing, but I think he's a really good player. Ends up going there at number 26 overall. Here's another team that could potentially upgrade corner, but I think they have more pressing needs, especially in the trenches, and I think we're going to just double dip on a certain type of player here. You have Nnamdi Madubuike, formerly Justin, and now you had Walter Nolan, who is a freak athlete, former #1 recruit in the nation, depending on where you looked, 1 or 2 with Travis Hunter. I mean, he's a special type of talent and has been a monster for Ole Miss this season. He's got really good potential, and I think combine him with Madubuike, you have something special on the interior there. He's not a nose tackle, but he and Madubuike could be really, really great together. You look at the Ravens, I think you go, depending on who's going to be there, if you can develop a Jabo and Owe off the edge, and then Nolan and Madubuike on the interior, I don't know if it even matters who your nose tackle is. No, it certainly does. But Nolan, I think, is a really great pass rushing option on the interior here, who is also he can be a space eater. Like, this is not a small guy at 6'3", 305. He is a monster player with potentially his best football still ahead of him, as you hope for with all these guys. Eagles at 28. I talked about it before. I think if Cameron Williams is on the board, I think the Eagles will take him. Stoutland University can really, really develop offensive linemen. This is your Lane Johnson replacement for the future. As a Texas fan, of course, I hate it to the Eagles. Also, Giants fan. Explained that a million times, but it's just a really good fit. Makes a ton of sense for them, I believe. Bills at 29, going Tyleik Williams. I think it's another team like the Ravens that could really stand to upgrade their interior defensive line. Tyleik Williams ends up being the pick here. Love Ed Oliver, right? But Tyleik Williams would be a really nice complementary piece to him if Oliver's 6th round long term, which you'd expect him to. Lions at 30. Had this fit before, but I think it's still a good fit. Dan Campbell at head coach. Jack Campbell at linebacker. Add Jahad Campbell also at linebacker, but he can rush the passer. Similarly to a Jalen Walker, this is a guy who's good off the ball and actually rushing the passer, although Walker's more of the edge, Campbell's more of the off-ball player, in my opinion. If you want to say, like, Walker 70-30, rush the passer, drop back in coverage type player, I think Campbell's the 30-70 type guy, and he's really, really good. It just feels like a great fit in Detroit. Versatile player, and I think that's really, really going to play well there in Detroit with the Lions, who've just been on some type of a run the past couple of years. They could win the Super Bowl this year, and I really feel that way of the next team as well. The Minnesota Vikings are really, really good and could stand to keep going to the well on offense. Go Caleb Johnson, one of the best running backs in this draft. It's a really good running back class. Caleb Johnson is worth a first-round pick, in my opinion, here. He's a big dude, too. 6 foot, 225. These are big backs. Like, if Amarion Hampton's a big back, it's 6'1", 220. Johnson's even bigger than that, maybe even a little bit more athletic. Really, really good running back class. If you want a running back, this is the year to take one because, oh my goodness, there are a million options. In the top 50 or 75 picks, you're going to see a lot of these go off the board, I think. Hampton's great. Judkins is great. Henderson is a great blocker even. Dylan Sampson was dominant in the SEC this year. And then you have great options down the board. I mean, TJ Giddens, Jarquez Hunter, Kyle Monungai. Bashal Tutin's a good player. Taj Brooks. Ollie Gordon was amazing last year. Le'Veon Moss is a good player. Like, you have such great options. We know about Cam Scattaboo. Kalel Mullings was good. Raheem Sanders, Rocket Sanders, been awesome in the past. Nick Singleton can go a lot higher than this. This class is so good. So good. Johnson is second back off the board there at 31. And then the Chiefs to round out the first round, going back to tackle Armand Membu, keeping him in the state. And I think the Chiefs could stand to upgrade their offensive line, especially tackle. Guard, center, guard looks to be really, really good with Trey Smith, Joe Tooney, and Creed Humphrey, of course, but tackle. They've been having some problems, right, over the past few years, really. Membu could hopefully solve that if you were the Kansas City Chiefs. That is Mock Draft Monday. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next week. Maybe a 2-rounder, maybe introduce some trades. Let me know what you want to see, and we'll make it happen. See you in the next one. Take it easy.